Welcome back to the Old West Tales, where every story whispers secrets of love, heartbreak, and redemption. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. Drop your location in the comments. I'm curious which part of the world my viewers are from. Sit back and let me take you on a journey that might just melt your heart tonight. Helpless, broken, humiliated, Emily Carter lay curled against the base of a dry cottonwood tree, her dress torn, her legs bruised, and her breath coming in short, shallow pulls as though every breath might be her last. The blazing sun hung over the Kansas frontier prairie, hot and unforgiving, turning the tall grass golden and the air into a shimmering furnace. Yet she did not move. A shadow stretched over her. A pair of dusty boots stopped only inches from her bare feet. Dust settled slowly around them. For a long moment, the man said nothing. Marshall Wyatt Turner stood there, tall and weathered, 50 hard years carved into his face by wind, hardship, and countless frontier troubles. One hand rested near the Colt revolver hanging at his hip, the habit of a man who had seen too many situations go wrong in the blink of an eye. He looked down at the young woman. His eyes did not soften. Not at first. Her fingers twitched. Then she flinched sharply when his shadow shifted closer, as though she had already learned exactly what happened whenever a man stepped too near. "Please," she whispered. Her voice was cracked and weak. "Don't take me back." Wyatt slowly crouched beside her. His boots ground softly against the dry dirt as he studied her, without speaking. One cheek was swollen. Dark marks covered her arms. Her torn dress clung to her where it shouldn't. This was no accident. This was no fall. He reached out toward her, then stopped halfway, as though even he understood that one wrong movement might shatter what little strength she had left. "I ain't taking you anywhere you don't choose to go," he said quietly. His voice was low and steady. She did not believe him. Not yet. When he finally lifted her from the ground, she stiffened like a trapped animal, weak and exhausted, yet still fighting inside. Far off, a ranch hand riding past slowed his horse long enough to witness the scene. Then he turned away and rode on. Wyatt did not take her to town. He did not ride toward the sheriff's office. He did not gather a crowd or ask for help. Instead, he carried her far beyond the road, far beyond the eyes of curious townsfolk, to a forgotten cabin sitting alone on the edge of his land. Inside, he carefully laid her upon a narrow bed. Then he stepped back and remained near the doorway like a man who knew he had no right to stand any closer. Outside, waves of heat drifted across empty fields. Inside, a bruised and frightened young woman rested inside a stranger's cabin, completely at his mercy. And over in Dodge City, people had already begun asking the same question. What kind of man takes a girl in that condition and doesn't bring her back? She woke suddenly. Her eyes flew open. Her body jerked as though she expected rough hands grabbing her again, expected pain to follow immediately after waking. But nobody touched her. There was only a small wooden room, a narrow bed, a chair against the wall, and a man standing beside the door. Wyatt did not move closer. He did not immediately speak. He simply watched the way a man watches an injured horse, carefully, patiently, knowing one wrong move might send it bolting. "You're safe here," he said. His voice remained calm and steady. She shook her head almost immediately. "No," she whispered. "No, I ain't." Her hands gripped the blanket tightly against her chest. "Where am I?" "My place," Wyatt answered. That answer did not help. Her breathing quickened. "You need to take me someplace safe," she said. Then her voice broke. "No, don't take me back. Just not there." Wyatt caught those words. Not there. That told him more than anything else she could have said. He stepped outside for a few minutes, leaving the door partly open so she could clearly see that he wasn't trying to trap her. A short while later, an older ranch woman from neighboring land arrived carrying fresh water and clean cloth. She asked no questions. She simply got to work. That helped far more than words ever could. By late afternoon, Emily finally managed to speak without trembling. "My father's dead," she said quietly. Wyatt leaned against the wall, listening. "He owned land south of here. Good grazing country." She swallowed. "He always said it would be mine." Wyatt nodded. Then her voice grew even quieter. My mama married Frank Dalton last winter. Wyatt's expression barely changed, but his eyes sharpened. After Pa got sick, Frank started handling everything. The cattle, the money, the paperwork. She stared down at her hands. He wanted me to sign everything over. Said a woman couldn't run a ranch that size. Did you? Wyatt asked. Emily shook her head. He hit me the first time I said no. Wyatt did not interrupt her. He had crossed paths with men like Frank Dalton before, men who smiled in public, shook hands in church, and spoke politely in town, yet ruled their homes through fear and intimidation. Once matters reached this point, words rarely solved anything. My mama just stood there, Emily continued. Her voice had become strangely flat now. She didn't say a word. She paused. Then she added the part that hurt the most. She didn't just stand there. She locked the door. Wyatt looked away for a moment. A mother refusing to protect her daughter was bad enough. A mother helping trap her own daughter was something else entirely. Emily wiped at her eyes. Frank's already talking to a clerk in Dodge City, she said, trying to make everything look legal. Wyatt straightened slightly. You got proof it ain't legal? Emily hesitated. Then she nodded. My pa told me something before he died. She slowly raised her eyes toward Wyatt. They were clearer now. Though the hurt remained deep inside them, he told me that if I ever stopped trusting anyone in that house, I should look where his old horse used to drink every morning. Wyatt said nothing, but he understood immediately. If what she was saying was true, then her father had hidden something important. And if Frank Dalton was already working through town officials, then time was running out. Outside, the prairie wind pushed dry grass against the cabin walls. Wyatt stared out across the open country. Be why tomorrow morning, they would not simply be searching for papers. They would be racing against the clock. The next morning arrived hot and cloudless. The Kansas sun wasted no time climbing into the sky. Wyatt was already saddling his horse when he noticed Emily step out of the cabin. She was dressed and ready. There was determination in her eyes now. Fear still lingered there, but it no longer controlled her. You ride? Wyatt asked. I have to, she answered. That was enough. They mounted their horses and headed toward Dodge City. Wyatt avoided the busiest roads. He knew better. Instead of entering to the main route, he guided them along quieter trails near the edge of town where fewer people would notice them. Unfortunately, in a frontier town, people notice everything. By the time they reached the first row of buildings, whispers had already begun. A man standing outside the general store leaned toward another and muttered something under his breath. A woman paused in the middle of crossing the street and stared openly at Emily. Wyatt felt the attention. Emily felt it even more. Then they saw him. Frank Dalton stood near a hitching post in front of Mercantile, waiting. Beside him stood Helen Dalton. Her arms were folded. Her face was hard. She looked exactly like a woman who believed nothing wrong had happened, as though she had not watched her own daughter be broken apart piece by piece. There she is, Frank called loudly. His voice carried across the street. He didn't sound relieved. He didn't sound worried. He sounded like a man who had finally located property that belonged to him. Emily's grip tightened around the saddle horn. Wyatt shifted slightly forward. Not aggressively. Just enough. She ain't going with you, he said. Frank laughed. A short, confident laugh. That's so. He stepped closer, slowly, like a man completely certain the ground beneath his boots belonged to him. That girl's family, Frank said loudly, and you got no business keeping her out all night. There it was. The lie had already been spread. The town had already heard a story, and it wasn't the truth. Emily opened her mouth to speak, but Helen cut her off immediately. Honey, she said softly. Her voice sounded sweet. Her eyes did not. You're confused. Come home. Emily froze. For just a moment, she looked like a frightened child again. Then Frank reached toward her. That was enough. Wyatt moved. Fast. He drove his shoulder directly into Frank's chest. The impact knocked the wind out of him. Before Frank could recover, Wyatt's fist shot upward from the hip. The punch landed hard. Frank staggered backward. Blood and dust flew from his mouth. Anger flashed across his face. With a growl, he swung wildly. Wyatt remained calm. He stepped inside the attack and struck again. The two men collided in the middle of the street. Dust exploded beneath their boots. People stopped walking. Store owners stepped outside. Windows opened. Everyone watched. Frank was younger, stronger, full of rage. But Wyatt wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to stop him. One solid punch dropped Frank onto one knee. The street fell silent. For a moment, then a voice rang out. "That's enough." The town sheriff stepped forward. One hand rested near his revolver. His eyes moved between both men. And just like that, everything changed. Because now the matter was no longer about truth. It was about appearances. And appearances were not on Wyatt's side. Emily looked around desperately. Surely someone had seen what happened. Surely someone would speak. No one did. Not a single person. Then Helen stepped closer. Her voice became soft again, almost gentle. "Come on, sweetheart," she said. "Let's go home." Emily stood frozen. The entire town seemed to be watching, judging, waiting, and this time she stopped resisting. Wyatt watched helplessly as she was guided toward the wagon, back toward the place she had escaped, back toward the people who had hurt her. The wagon rolled away. Dust rose behind it. Wyatt remained standing in the middle of the street, breathing heavily, watching until it disappeared. And he knew one thing with absolute certainty. If he didn't act fast, Emily Carter would never get another chance to escape. Wyatt Turner did not ride back into Dodge City. He did not chase the wagon. He did not argue with the sheriff. That would have been a mistake. Instead, he rode the other direction, past dry fields, past old fence lines most folks no longer paid attention to, straight toward the old Carter ranch Emily had spoken about. The place felt different now. Empty, wrong, like something important had already been stolen from it. Wyatt slowed his horse near a weathered corral that leaned half into the dirt. The wood was sun-bleached and cracked from years beneath the Kansas sky. He dismounted slowly. "If I was an old rancher who didn't trust his own house," he muttered, "I sure wouldn't leave anything where greedy hands could find it." He walked toward the old water trough. The wood had been worn smooth by decades of horses drinking there. Then he noticed it. One board, too straight, too clean, too deliberate. Wyatt crouched and ran his fingers along the edge before prying it loose with the butt of his knife. Beneath it sat a small tin box. No lock, no markings. He opened it carefully. Inside were folded papers wrapped tightly in cloth. Dry, protected, preserved. Wyatt didn't smile. He simply nodded. "Smart man," he whispered. He didn't need to read every page. The signatures, the official seal, the names. That was enough. Emily had told the truth. Every word of it. He tucked the documents inside his coat and climbed back into saddle. Now it wasn't simply about helping a frightened young woman. Now it was about justice. And time was running short. Back at the Carter house, the pressure was growing. Emily sat at the kitchen table. A document lay before her. Frank stood behind her chair. Helen leaned against the wall, watching, waiting. "Just sign it," Frank said. "Make this easy." Emily never touched the pen. "You already made every decision without me," she replied quietly. "You don't need my name." She looked up at him. "You just want it." Frank's jaw tightened. "Girl, don't test me." Helen stepped forward. "You can't run a ranch this size," she said coldly. "You'll lose it within a year." Emily looked directly at her mother, really looked at her. "And you think he won't?" The question struck harder than either expected. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Frank slammed his hand onto the table. "Sign it." Emily remained still. Then she reached toward a cup of water. Her hand trembled just enough to look convincing. Helen moved toward a nearby door and unlocked it to let fresh air into the room. Emily Carter refused to sign over her late father's ranch to her cruel stepfather, Frank Dalton. When Frank and her mother, Helen, pressured her once again, Emily seized an opportunity to escape. She knocked her chair into Frank, grabbed a kitchen knife for protection, and ran across the yard toward freedom. Frank caught her before she could escape. But Wyatt Turner arrived just in time and calmly ordered him to let her go. Seeing Wyatt's determination, Frank finally released her. The next day, Wyatt and Emily brought hidden documents left by her father to the county office in Dodge City. The papers proved that the ranch legally belonged to Emily. Witnesses confirmed the authenticity of the documents, and the truth could no longer be denied. Frank's attempt to manipulate, threaten, and argue failed completely. By the end of the day, he lost all claim to the ranch. Helen stood silently as everything she had helped Frank take slipped away. Emily realized that the deepest betrayals often come from the people who should have protected us. In the weeks that followed, the Carter Ranch slowly recovered. Fences were repaired, cattle returned, and life began again. Wyatt never tried to claim credit or control the ranch. He simply helped because it was the right thing to do. Emily grew stronger, learning how to manage the ranch and stand up for herself. Over time, she and Wyatt built a quiet bond based on trust and respect. Years later, people around Dodge City remember the story not because of property dispute, but because it showed the power of courage and loyalty. Emily refused to surrender despite betrayal and hardship, while Wyatt stood beside someone in need when everyone else turned away. Their story became a reminder that true courage is not always found in gunfights. It is often found in standing for what is right, even when standing alone. Justice may come slowly, but when good people refuse to quit, it eventually arrives. Their story became a reminder that true courage is not always found in gunfights. It is often found in standing for what is right, even when standing alone. Justice may come slowly, but when good people refuse to quit, it eventually arrives. And long after the dust settled, folks still spoke of the day one determined young woman reclaimed her future. They remembered the rancher who stood beside her when nobody else would. Their legacy became part of frontier legend, proving that honor and courage can outlast fear and greed. Under the wide Kansas sky, their story lived on for generations to come. I love all of you, my wonderful audience of Wild West Tales. Tell me how this story made you feel. Leave a comment below. Type 1 if you love this story. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more epic tales from the wild.